Hey guys, Mr. Lloyd here, going to work with you on today, Thursday, April 30th. This this video is going to go over the page that I've got displayed on the screen. It says make a dot plot up top. It says 8-2 class activity. And so let's get right into it. We're going to use this data set that the paper has provided us to create a dot plot. And before I get into a little bit of an explanation, let's just quickly read this. So it says the data below show the number of hours the number of hours a group of students spent doing homework last week. And so to kind of unpack that a little bit, to decipher what that means, this 5 means that this person studied for 5 hours last week. This 4 means that this person studied for 4 hours last week. This person studied for 1 hour. This person studied for 6 hours. This person studied for 0 hours, and so on and so forth. Okay? It's important to understand before you plot this what each of these means. So once you've kind of got that understanding down, then your job is to draw a dot plot to represent the data. And remember, the dot plot, the point of these dot plots is to take these numbers, and if you look, they're not ordered in any specific way, 5, 4, 1, 6, 0, 5, 3, 3, and so on. It's hard for our brains to make sense of those numbers when they're ordered like this. So we create these dot plots to help us see the data visually and see which amount of time, in this case, amount of time spent doing homework, which one is the most common, which one is the least common. There might be some patterns in the data that we would see. And so that's the utility or the use of these kinds of graphs, these kinds of plots. Okay, so to draw a dot plot, the very first thing I do is I take my pen and I make my number line, just a nice little horizontal line like this, and I make hash marks with each number. Before I make these hash marks, though, I have to think, well, how big, what is the range of my data? In other words, what's the smallest number? 0. What's the largest number? 8. So I need to have, my dot plot needs to include all the numbers between 0 and 8. I can go a little bit larger and a little bit lower if I want to, just to give it, just so that it looks nice on the page, but you don't need to go any farther since no one in this data set, no one studied for 9 hours. Okay, so we make it 0 through, in this case, 8 or 9 if you want to go one farther. And remember, when we're making a number line, we want to keep each number evenly spaced all throughout. Again, the paper provides you, it's really hard to see with the picture, but the paper does provide you with grids to help space your work out a little bit. Okay? And then we start here, and the way we plot these is we start with I start with the number on the left, 5, and I make a little dot for 5. And then I do 4, and I make a dot for 4, and then 1 over here, and then 6 over here, and 0 gets plotted right there. So each of these pieces of data represents one plot. And then I come over to 5. Now for my second 5, I just go one line above, or one little bit above, right there, okay? And then 3 for my second 3. This is my first 3, I'm sorry. I put it here. My second 3, I put it right above the first 3, and so on and so forth. So I plot each of these numbers down here. The reason you see on my paper that these are underlined is so that I don't, it's very easy when you're plotting these to accidentally plot the same number twice. In fact, you can see my whiteout marks here where I was making some mistakes. And so I like to underline, or you can like slash them out or something, just as a way for you to keep track of which of the ones you've put down here already and which of the ones you have not put down here. Okay? So you just do that with each number, and there is your final dot plot. So yours should look pretty similar. Last thing you want to do is give your dot plot a title. So the title needs to help the whole point of a title is to help someone who didn't create this dot plot, help them make sense of it. And so in this case, I look and I say, well, what was this dot plot about? What are we tracking here? What does this data represent? Well, it's hours spent doing homework. So I just made a name saying hours spent doing homework. You could say hours spent studying. You could change the name just a bit there, as long as it's enough to make sense of. Okay. So we've got our dot plot made. Let's go down and answer some of these questions. And before I get into the answers, you'll notice that I don't do any computations on this whole page. I'm just explaining my thinking, just doing a whole lot of like thinking about this dot plot. What does it represent? Why did I create it in the way that I did, and so on. So let's get into it. How many students does your dot plot represent? Well, there are 15 dots. You can go up and count them if you like, but there are 15. Each dot represents one student, so that means there must be 15 students. Pretty straightforward there. Here it says, why are there no dots shown at 2 and 7? So let's just zoom up or come up just a bit here. There's a whiteout mark, but that was a mistake, so that's not a dot. And then 7 is also blank. So 2 and 7 are blank. Why are there no dots shown at 2 and 7? Well, let's look at the data set. Do you see any 2s? Do you see any 7s? I don't see either one. So that tells me that there are no student studied for 2 hours and no student studied for 7 hours. Okay. Why is 5 the most frequent number of hours? This is one where your answer might vary a bit from mine because this is one where often in math we have these kind of nice black and white answers to questions, but in this case there's not a real black and white. There's not an absolute right or wrong. This is just kind of use your reasoning skills and see if you can come up with a good reason why 5 would be the most frequent. And so what I came up with is that 5 is probably the most frequent because there are 5 days in the school week. This is about people doing homework. And so maybe a student studies 1 hour a night. And so after 5 nights, they would have studied 5 hours for the week. And of course, the data was recorded for 1 week. So that's my rationale. Yours might be a little bit different. But the whole point of this is to really get you to think about the data. Why would this particular data make sense? And so 5 hours, this is my rationale for why 5 hours is the most frequent. Okay, here we go with a couple questions about predicting. Again, answers might vary significantly, so I'll explain to you what I'm thinking here. The data represent 15 students. Would the scale of the plot change if it included more students? So I'm going to zoom out real quick to explain really quickly what we mean by scale. So the scale would be basically how large vertically, how tall does it need to be? And in this case, the most frequent number is 5 hours. So we don't need our plot to give us, to go up any higher than 4, enough space for 4 pieces of data to record. So would the scale of the plot change if it included more students? Well, if I had more students as part of my data, and if I had, let's say I had 10 more students that recorded 1 hour a week, my graph would need to be, my scale would need to be increased way up here, something like that, okay, where my mouse is right now. So yeah, the scale would increase if we added students because there would be more data to collect, and presumably their data would be similar to these data. So there's no reason to think it'd be significantly different. So that is my answer there. Let's come down to part 6 here. It says predict. Suppose the data represents 6th grade students. Would the data change if it represented high school students? So again, this is one of those questions where your answer might vary a bit from mine, and that's perfectly fine. This isn't an absolute black and white one. My presumption is it's likely that the range would change. In other words, the scale, we were going up vertically. The range is the values from smallest to largest. And so the reason I say that is, in this case, the largest number was 8 hours a week. And the question says, let's suppose this is 6th graders' homework practice time, homework study time. So 0, some people study 0 hours, some people study 8 hours, but no one studies more than 8 hours according to this data. And it's asking, you kind of have to know more about high school students. How much do they study? Some high school students study for huge amounts of time throughout the week. They might study for 15 or 20 hours a week. So instead of 8 being our largest number, we'd have to expand this out where my mouse is going horizontally to 15 or maybe even larger than 15 to account for the amount of time that high school students have spent studying. So this is one of those where if we were collecting data on high school students, we would probably have larger numbers as well as some of these smaller numbers. Okay, So this just asks you to kind of lean on some of that background knowledge that you have about high school students. Okay, it's probably the case, this is my opinion and presumption as a teacher, it's likely that high school students study more than sixth graders. It's likely, although, you know, you never really know, I guess. Okay, but those last couple questions, remember your answers might vary a little bit from mine. Don't feel like you have to word yours exactly the same as mine, or that our predictions have to be perfectly lined up. We're all coming in with a little bit different understanding of these. And that's all I'm going to do for this video. I'm going to post the next video in just a moment. Please remember to ask questions through our Zoom meetings. You can ask through text messages, phone calls, emails, remind, drive by and honk, and maybe I'll wave at you. Anyway, any way you need to get in touch, though, I'm pretty available. So please keep these questions coming. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you later.